Hello everybody, James here, Ask Dutch Anything, episode 60. When I just said 60 to myself, Dutch went, geez, we've done 60 of these?
Oh, they all run together after a while.
Yeah, they sort of do, I understand that. I do my best to try and not ask questions.
You know where we need to do this? If we ever get together, we need to do a trip and just, put two cameras up and let's just start talking like we're on a wrestling trip. That's where I learned all this stuff. Get in the car with all these guys. If it's 3 hours from Memphis, we had 3 hours for gossip and 3 hours to gossip back or to drink on the way back. So
you know what I told, my wife said?
Right.
This generally will pertain to you, is she wants to go next year. She wants to go to France for a couple of months. Just rent a villa, or not villa, but an Airbnb, a house for a couple of months with a pool and just relax there. And I said, why don't we do it in Tampa? Because then I can write it off as a business expense, and then we can get a more expensive place for the same price. Ultimately,
you can't write France off as a business expense.
I'm going to do my best, but I don't think so. No, there's not that many French wrestlers that I know living there.
Hey, I could develop oui. I could develop a French accent, and you could have them listen to me trying to do my French. And we'd be talking about that. Hey, does France even have wrestling other than WWF?
Yeah, apparently they did. Yeah, they and so did Spain. My dad in the I'm dating myself here because I've got an old dad. In the 40s and 50s, used to go see pro wrestling in Spain. So it was really big there back in the day. But just people, I guess in the English-speaking world, just don't really know much about the wrestling in Germany or France or Spain or whatever, but it's thriving at points.
But they don't have local, they don't have any kind of a wrestling program in France now.
Well, like a big-time thing? I doubt it.
Or Spain. But I've heard about it. Spain has one. France has one. I read one like it. Russia has it.
Yeah.
Who told me that?
Putin.
Yeah, Vladimir told me.
Yeah. While wrestling a bear.
But a guy did tell me he's going to open up, this guy I know, he's going to open up a wrestling company in Crete. Is that the way you say it?
Yeah.
He's Cretan, I guess, and he was from the UK, and something happened, and he relocated back to where he's from. I imagine. I just talked to him the other day, and he wants to start a show there, and I've been talking to him. So, but he has a problem there because he doesn't have any experienced guys. So, it's like trying to open an auto shop and nobody knows how to change batteries or change spark plugs. It would be kind of hard.
But it didn't stop Titanis NL Ring, though, did it? They had a bunch of bums there and they just put outfits on them and it worked out great.
Who was this?
You love this. We talk about it occasionally. Is it Titanis? You always call it Del Ring, but it's NL Ring.
Titanis Del Ring. You got to roll the R. Titanis Del Ring.
But you saw.
I love that.
Them tramps that they just dressed up. They just dragged some people off the street, put a devil outfit on them, and said, "Get out there, do something."
And it did quite well for a couple of years because it was a show.
It went for years. Went for years. That thing apparently.
Titanis Del Ring, and I read about the guy, and the guy, he wrote the book. He says, I'm gay and proud of it, and he was one of their stars. I forgot what his name was now, but he would bring all these characters, even biblical characters. He brought like the shepherd boy, brought it back, and the invisible, let me explain this. If you want to see Titanes, Titanes,
yes.
It's in Spanish, Del, D-E-L.
It's not Del, it's N-L, E-N-E-L.
Titanes L Ring? I think you're wrong.
I'm looking at the logo, Titanes NL Ring.
Okay. Call me a liar in public.
He's also called, Martin. I haven't got my glasses.
Yeah, that was his name.
Yeah, it's Martin Caradagian or something like that.
Yeah, but look it up. And I had a guy from, I met him years ago. He was from, I think he was from Chile, and he found his way to the United States. He was a wrestler, and I worked some independent shows with him when I was just starting out. And he told me about wrestling in South America. And I guess he worked with this guy. I guess he, but see, Titanes El Ring wouldn't mean anything to me then. It means something to me now. And where I ran across this, I was in Puerto Rico one night watching a black and white TV in Spanish. I didn't understand anything. And the show came on. Of course, it was a self contained show. So they had their commentary built in. And I watched the show and I went, this is actually pretty entertaining because he would bring all the characters out there, the shepherd boy. He would bring
the mummy.
I can't remember.
A magician, the aliens.
Yeah, the Invisible Man.
Invisible Man.
And I sat there and watched it, and this guy, he had a match with the Invisible Man with the commentary beside it, going on behind it. And you can imagine, that happening today. But Ronnie Garvin told me one time he was at this show and the attendance wasn't too good. And they're talking about canceling the show. He said, screw this. He got the referee. He says, I'm going to wrestle the Invisible Man, get in the ring. And they got in the ring without the promoter's knowledge. And they started, and he had the announcer say, announce the guys from, he may have even done it myself. I've been challenged by the Invisible Man, Ronnie Garvin, that's me, I'm going to wrestle him. And he had a match where he beat the Invisible Man, only 5 minutes. That's so the promoter would have to pay him. And that's an old Ronnie Garvin story. I laughed, and he was telling it and laughing too. I forgot where it happened. I think it happened somewhere in West Virginia, but he made the promoter pay him because the promoter was thinking about canceling the show, and he wanted to be paid for the show. So he went out there and had a match with the Invisible Man. I wish I had a tape of that. I really do.
Or maybe the Invisible Man filmed it.
Well, anyway, this guy for the Titanes El Ring, like you say, they have the Invisible Man on there.
They had a Cyclops,
and it's on YouTube.
It's great. Yeah, please search for it. It's great. We actually did a watch along quite some time ago, so hunt out for that as well. Right then, I'll do the intro, books and diplomas and all that kind of thing. Dirty Dutch Mantell with 2Ls at gmail.com. Make your request there, of course. The Facebook page, Stevie Richards Show out every Friday. And the most important thing to mention is questions for Dutch at gmail.com. That is how you write in to submit questions to the show that Dutch might well answer if it's good enough. And the first one, Tim from Alabama. Dear Dutch, hope this finds you better. My question is about Norvell Austin. Norvell was a mainstay in Southeastern/Continental and for a long while the only African American in the area. He had good runs as a member of the Midnight Express and with Coco Beware as PYT, but never seemed to have a good push to go any further. What was your take on Austin and any stories you can tell? Thank you.
I think I don't know exactly where he was from. I don't think he was from Memphis, but I met him in Memphis and worked with him. I actually brought him to Florida, him and Coco Beware, and great worker. And he was a part of what was the name of that family? The Rocket Monroe. He was a Monroe one time. And Rocket Monroe was over in Memphis he was over like Rover. And I read about Rocket. He actually was one of the forces behind the desegregation of Memphis, because at the time, now this was years ago, I think probably in somewhere in the 60s, they would not let African Americans sit on the lower level. And he went on strike about it. Told everybody about it.
You talking about Sputnik Monroe here?
Yeah, Sputnik.
Yeah.
And he says that he will not wrestle in Memphis again until they opened up the seating sections to black people on the main floor. And they got behind him more than they would a black guy because he was their voice. And when Sputnik was there, place was full. And they loved him there. And he did a lot for race relations in Memphis. But later on, here came, who are you talking about now?
Norvell Austin.
Norvell. I can't remember. I've been hit on the head too many times. Norvell, and they put blonde in his hair right there, so he would look like one of the Monroes, and they had a good run, and they had nothing. And this was a weird situation. To all the white people in attendance, Rocket was a dastardly heel. But to all the black people who came, he was a huge baby face. So now you had competing boos, yay, boos. But he did a lot for race relations in Memphis, and it was the time of desegregation and all that. So a very historical time in America, as well as the wrestling as the wrestling world too. But good guy, good worker, very respectful, and a very nice man.
But yeah, so Norvell Austin originally tagged with Sputnik
With
Monroe.
Cornette. Sputnik.
Yeah, Sputnik Monroe, and they were one of the first mixed race heel teams.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's a fairly big deal back in the early 70s.
Yeah, in the 60s and the 70s was the days of desegregation, very historical time in the U.S. And I mean, every day it was on the news every day. So it was. I remember one time I was still in high school, and I had a friend. He had to go take a car back. No, he had to go drop off his brother at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And he had to be back at 6 o'clock in the morning, or he would be AWOL. He'd be absent without leave. So he told me he was going, and it's a long trip from where it's about 400 miles. So we left about 9 o'clock at night, and we had to get him there by 6 o'clock in the morning. So we started driving, and it was a little bitty, it was a two-seater really, and a back seat. And that's where the brother got. He just went to sleep back there. We were taking him back to Fort Bragg. Guess what night we left on? The night that Martin Luther King got shot in Memphis. Brother, every town we went through, it was like the army was locking it down. We could see fires in all these towns we went through. And we went through, I forgot where we went through, some town, and a guy pulled us over and he said, well, guys, I'd advise y'all to get off the highway because they got a lot of problems tonight. Well, we couldn't get off the highway. We had to get into Fort Bragg. So we drove, and we could see fires in the towns, and, and not a lot of traffic out that night either. And we got stopped a couple of times by the National Guard. They stopped us and asked us where we were going, checked the car, because they didn't know us from Adam's house cat. So we finally got to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and dropped him off. And that was the first time, this is another first for me, I'd never seen the Atlantic Ocean. And it was very close to the Atlantic Ocean. I told the guy, I said, hey, can we go see the ocean? He said, yeah. Went down, stayed about 20 minutes. We watched it. Oh, yeah. Just like the films I'd seen, the waves lapping up. And so we took back. So we spent about probably, I don't know, it was probably 12 hours, 10 hours or 12 hours up there. We probably spent 24 hours on that trip. So, but anyway, I don't even know what brought that story up. But, race was a big issue at one time in this country. And it still is, really.
Do you have any thoughts or memories of Pretty Young Things, the tag team with Norvell and Coco?
I think they got their name in Memphis, and I brought them to Florida, and I did a vignette of them, video of them arriving, because I had them with Percy Pringle, and he was going to meet them, and this is the first time that the Florida audience had ever seen these guys, pretty young things. I don't know what that rings about in your head, but I think this is the first time I had the fans see them.
Yeah. Oh, it
So,
was a Michael Jackson song at the time, so I think that's where they got the name from.
and I brought him in, and he picked them up, and that's how we got them started. Florida at that time was under duress, more or less, because Dusty had just left, and it was really, really hard trying to kickstart that territory again. Because when Dusty left, this is a little bit of history. He took everybody who was anybody with him, and he went to Charlotte. He went to the Mid Atlantic, and he took everybody with him. Took Magnum TA. He took a few more. Took who was the Russian guy? I
Oh,
remember.
Nikita
He,
or
he took
Ivan.
Nikita.
Yeah.
Took Nikita with him, and took them all. So when I left, when I got there, guess what? I I inherited the leftovers. So, and guys would call to come in, and I'd say, "Well, I'm tell you, we're down right now, and I can't guarantee you any money." Well, screw that. So they didn't come. So I was left with what was left, and it took me about 3 months, and that's why I complain sometimes about, you got to give it time. You can't force anything on these people; they're just not going to be there. Take your time, tell the story, and about 3 months later, I had my first sellout.
We shall move on. Sydney says, Dear Dutch and James, I grew up watching wrestling on local TV and attended events at the old Tucson Sports Center, watching people like Don Arnold, the Dupree brothers, Louis Martinez, and Tito Montez. Did you ever wrestle in Phoenix or Tucson metro area? And if so, do you have any stories of those guys?
No, when I started, I think that territory was, I don't know if it was running then. It didn't run long, because how I heard about even them there being a territory in that Tucson, Arizona, and that area, was Buddy Fuller. Buddy Fuller, an old time promoter, used to go in and buy territories for nothing, basically, build them up a little bit till he could find a buyer, and he'd hit the road. So if he bought the territory, this is years ago, say he bought the territory for $10,000, he would just want to get it up to where he could sell it for 25,000 or 30,000, and give him enough time, and he would start back working then too, and I think he would bring his sons in. So it was a family deal, and they would get it up to where it was kind of starting to thrive a little bit. And then he would sell that territory and leave. And guess what happened to the territory when he left?
He would die.
Boom, it
So,
would
so
drop.
that's how you do it then. So he'd bring Ron and Robert in to be the stars.
Well,
sort of
he would
hotshot
bring
the
him in.
territory a little bit, get exciting, and then off we go.
Yep. And he would bring it, and he just ran it back. Wrestling 101. That's how he booked it. And he would book, and he would start working too. And Buddy Fuller, he really understood this business. He gave me actually one of not my first booking job, but he gave me my first job outside of where I broke in Georgia. I went to Knoxville, and he had taken it over, and Ron was running it. I don't think Robert was there, but Ron was running it, and they did big business there, because and I've talked about Ron Fuller before. I think he's probably one of the unheard of heroes of the wrestling business, because he didn't go to the mainstream territories like Charlotte. Went to Florida one time, but he said, and he went to Memphis one time. He said, "Screw that. and I'll tell you that story in just a second. But he would uh he would take a territory, a virgin territory, or virgin area that didn't have a territory before, and make it into a territory and get it running. He would run little towns like only maybe 10,000 population and do 1,500 people in the high school gym because they would come from miles around, and he just knew how to book.
Mm.
And Buddy taught him all this, and he ended up selling that territory too, not because he wanted to, because he had opposition, because he had a territory there, and all the guys saw how much money that territory was doing. They all went opposition to him and pulled away. And that's where he ended up selling that territory. And I don't know, he didn't he didn't buy he just took it over, I think. He took it over from a guy that was just running a town, Knoxville. I forgot what the guy's name is, but he bought it for nothing almost. And probably in a couple of years, or probably about 5 years later, he ended up selling it for about 100 grand, 200 grand.
Mm.
So
at one point, wasn't he running two promotions?
he was.
I'm talking about
running,
Ron Fuller. Was it like not Clearwater?
Continental.
There was Continental, but was there not also somewhere in Florida he was running at the same time, like Gulf Coast or something?
Well, that is what I'm saying. Gulf
Was
Coast.
it? I thought it was Alabama.
Continental and Gulf Coast was kind of the same thing.
I see.
And then he was running Knoxville too. Then he sold Knoxville to and then he ended up selling Continental to a guy named David Wood, I think, that owned the TV station in Montgomery. Sold that for a hell of a lot of money, more than he paid for it, I'm sure. Then he got into the hockey business.
Oh yeah,
and that's where he made his big money.
Yeah, we've talked about the hockey thing quite a few times. It was with Ron Fuller as well, so hunt out that full episode. I encourage you to, because it's a good story. Next question, Freddie. Who would be in your top 5 wrestling shit list of people who screwed you over or were unhelpful to your career or were just general buttholes to you?
Well, I try not to dwell on guys who were like assholes.
You did mention David Woods, though, didn't you? Would he be in the top 5?
No, he was okay. He wouldn't be in the.
Oh, who's the guy in Continental who you just didn't get on with then?
Oh, what was his name? I can't remember. Yeah, I didn't like him at all because he was a liar too, and he's probably passed away now. So let's don't talk ill of the dead. But if you give me some names, I can tell you whether I liked them or not.
Oh, Lord.
But what I've done, I've taken all of those people that kind of screwed me over and kind of forgotten about them. That's carrying excess baggage that's unnecessary. So, and if they're buttholes, they know they're buttholes, and I think other people know they're buttholes too. So, who sent you this?
Freddie.
Freddie, I would like to be able to answer your question. However, I don't want to be toxic. I don't have an air of toxicity about this program. So I much rather talk about people I like and that advance the wrestling business instead of those that kind of turned a blind eye to me. Hey, well, Louis Tilley is one.
Who's Louis Tilley?
He's an old-time booker, is what he was. And I talked to him about getting a job one time, and he just blew me off. Kind of rude too, but then again, I didn't know what kind of day he was having, so I never held that against him. But I've heard other guys didn't like him too. He was a kind of a French extraction and had a little bit of a short temper too, and not a big guy either. But yeah, I didn't get along with him.
Okay, well, that as good an answer as any. We will move on. Kevin has said, Ron Fuller recently said on YouTube that when Nick Gulas got started, wrestlers would make him lay down on the floorboard of the car and put their feet on him as they drove from town to town. He said this is why Nick was so cheap on payouts, because he was getting revenge. Did you ever hear this?
Oh, yeah. That's a true story.
It really? Never heard this.
Nick Gulas, when he started out, I forgot who had the territory, but he started out like running little towns and being the gopher of the office. And I forgot how he finally uh, got power, but he got in there and he would ride with some wrestlers going to a town. And as a joke, they'd put him in the floorboard and, put their feet on him. And I don't think they were like rough with him or anything, but it embarrassed him. And I don't know if he just, when he finally got control, and I have no idea how he got control. I really don't. Uh, but it was a slow process. He finally bought out the other promoter or something like that. But I don't think he got back at wrestlers for like revenge. I think he was just a cheap bastard. He was cheap as hell. And you would go to Memphis. See, Memphis was a territory and Nashville was a territory. And I worked in Nashville too, but I got a guarantee from it, so I wouldn't starve to death. So, and what saved Nick Gulas' territory one year was me and Savage. We basically saved the whole territory for Nick. Of course, we never got credit for it, but I got my money and Savage got his money. So we were both making what we had required to even work the territory. And it did so well that finally, when I ended up going to Puerto Rico from there, and then when I came back, Jerry Jarrett got on the phone with me and brought me to Memphis. So that's how that works. Yeah, but Nick was very, very cheap. His son, I still call him the worst wrestler in wrestling history, had to be, and was dumb as a rock on top of that for procurement, I guess, or he tried to pick up a hooker off the street. Well, they arrested him. And 2 nights later, they arrested him again for trying to pick up the same hooker that he just had tried to get 2 nights earlier. So 2 nights and the same charge both nights. I don't know. I think they just fined him or whatever, but he wasn't God's gift to the intellect.
No, he unburdened by genius. Now, do you know who Nick? I didn't realize Nick Gulas was promoting from the 40s. I didn't realize he had that much tenure. Do you know who the co-founder of NWO Mid America was? It was Roy
Welch.
There you go.
And guess who he's the father of?
Ron Fuller.
Buddy Fuller.
Sorry, Buddy Fuller.
And Buddy Fuller bequeathed Ron and Robert. So that Welch family, well, I mean, they actually started Tennessee wrestling, and they kept it going up through Buddy. And Buddy, if you talk to him, Buddy could give you a finish where you were getting beat and get you excited about it. He would give me a finish. All right, Dutch, I want you to get in there, and I want you to get on him. I want you to beat the crap out of him and throw him out of the ring and hit him here and hit him there. And bam, bam. Then all of a sudden you miss something big, and he makes a big comeback. Boom, and you're going, yeah. Yeah, you're getting excited. Well, him giving you this finish. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you poke him in the eyes and do something, and you go to slam him. He gets you in the small package. 1, 2, 3. And then they ring the bell, and he rolls out, and you pitch a pitch, and now it's going to be great. Hell, I couldn't wait to get to the ring to get beat. But he had a lot of energy, and he knew what the people wanted. And because, you've heard me talk about read the room. Probably I learned that from him. He said, you can tell what kind of mood they're in and go into the ring. And he was always right. And I always liked Buddy, and I always liked his 2 sons. Great guys.
But Nick Gulas, bit cheap. And
bit cheap.
Okay, incredibly cheap then. We shall move on. Simon from the UK says, hey, Dutchman, looking back through some of your old matches, you shared the ring a number of times with Baron von Raschke. At this stage of his career, what did you make of his antics? Cheers.
I didn't share the ring with him that much. I did. Good guy. But I never rode with him. My interaction with the Baron was mostly in the dressing room. Not a big talker, uh, but very pleasant to be with. A big guy too. You wouldn't think he would be that. He was a tough guy, and I always treated me nice. Always had a lot of good advice, and but again, he was. I have no stories about him really. He would just go to the ring and just be the. But he was the epitome of the German. When a German came out back in the day, you know, right after World War II, the Germans, they were big, big heels. You didn't have to just put them in the ring as Germans, and they were natural heels. The Japanese were too, and that was from the World War II. Basically, like Tojo Yamamoto used to be walking to the ring. People hated him because he wasn't a big guy, but he was a sneaky Japanese wrestler. But they told you what they were on the way to the ring. So you could pick your favorites. I don't like him. He's a German. Or I don't like him. He's a Japanese. And of course, you have your American guys come out because everybody was for them. But the wrestling's kind of gotten away from that now. The only one either trying to do a German gimmick is Gunther, and actually doing a really, really good job. And I don't think people hate him because he's a German, and I don't think they really hate him. I think they kind of like him now, but he does a great job of that.
I'm going to say something about Baron, and I want to mention something else I've wanted to mention to you for a while. Baron, when I watched him, retrospectively, he's sort of quite goofy of a wrestler, almost like a Jimmy Valiant, big arm swinging and that kind of thing, very basic stuff. I know he was older at the time, Baron, and a legitimate shooter, I believe, as well. Very high credentials in amateur wrestling, so I understand. But I always thought Baron was had a really goofy presentation, not only as with the claw, but in his wrestling as well. So
That's funny. But
am I being too harsh there? Because I know I'm watching him
no.
in his later years. I don't know about Indianapolis or anything like that, but
well, he probably had to be a little more serious in Indianapolis because he was working against the Bruiser and all those guys. But when I saw him, I don't think he gave a crap. I really don't. I think he was there just picking up a check, doing as least as he could, and that's when he should have been the goofiest. But I never really. I think I was in a match with him one time, and when you sit down and you look at him, he looks intense when you're just looking straight on to him. So, and I never really got buddy with him because I didn't know what he was like. The first time I saw Abdullah the Butcher, did I tell you this?
Yes, you didn't realize he spoke English, and you asked
No, I thought he was really from wherever he was, Somalia or wherever, and I didn't think he spoke English, and I was sitting across and I'm saying, hey, this guy looks kind of, he looks kind of dangerous. I was thinking he was going to pull that spike out and get me, but because if you don't know, you don't know. So say the people who really took Von Raschke serious, he was a dangerous guy. And people who took Abdul serious, he was a dangerous guy. Or Bruiser Brody, or Stan Hansen, or or like the Von Erichs, the old Von Erich. Yeah, he was people. The old assassin. These older wrestlers who didn't talk to people much. People actually thought their gimmick was real. And once they got them in that little echo chamber, they had them. So, and they were some territories, I believe. Somebody asked me, Memphis had a rule one time that baby faces and heels could not go into the same convenience store at the same time. Because if they heard that and could prove it, they would find you. So we would always, if we pulled up and the good guys or the baby faces were in the store, because fans would follow them. So we'd have to wait till they left. So we always tried to beat the baby faces there so we could be in there first so they couldn't go in. So we go in and said, yeah, had to make you wait a little bit, didn't we? We'd always mess with them. But, and if you was in the same bar, they didn't want you, but, they was a little more forgiving in the bars because they had a lot of other people in there. But yeah, once you got that in their heads, it was hard to get it out.
Now we were talking. Well, you were talking about Germans, and you automatically knew to boo them. Do you remember he debuted in the late '80s, and he turned up in Smoky Mountain Wrestling? He was mostly just an independent wrestler, the Stormtrooper. He had Nazi swastikas on his mask, on his T-shirt, front and back. Even in the late '80s, people must have been like, Jesus, come off it.
I think they did. Because he wasn't there that long.
No, he was in Smoky Mountain very briefly. I do know that. I'm just looking at some photos of him, and I don't know. I'm trying to find this independent. It's even got Gordon Soley in it, and I think it might be like USA promotion, and it had Bob Armstrong involved in it in '88. But a few years later in Smoky Mountain, he turned up there as well. But crikey, that's strong stuff, even for that era.
So he was in Smoky Mountain. Cornette had to book him, right?
Yes, Cornette booked a Nazi.
He didn't get over. I mean, he just didn't.
No, I think he had a manager as well who just waved, who dressed as a German and waved the flag and everything. It's like there's a bit like on the nose, that one, I think.
You got him yet?
Have I got him? Oh, I'm looking for a video. I can't find a video of him. Shall I try and find video? Give me a second. No. I'll forget it.
Right.
Look him up. We'll move on. Zweller writes in from Roanoke, Virginia. First, I hope Dutch is doing well and recovering well. I don't know if Dutch was there at the time, but who the hell was Curry Man in TNA, and whose idea was it for that gimmick? Curry Man.
Well, I'm pretty sure that was Christopher Daniels, and I'm gonna save you the trouble next time. Instead of asking me, just ask Google. Or just go to Bing and said, who was Curry Man in TNA? And I don't know whose idea that was. I think Christopher Daniels, it was his idea because he saw it. He did the role in Japan, I think. And he came out, and it's a comedic character. And he actually got over pretty well. Curry Man. So imagine that. Coming out, I think he's got a mask on, got all this stuff. Curry Man, it could mean anything you want it to mean. He ate curry. He was a curry farmer. He was this. He was that. So
I'd like to see a curry farmer.
Well, what is curry? It's rice, right?
No, curry's the sauce.
What is curry?
It's
well, whatever. It's something like that. You eat curry, right?
Yes, you do. I do, especially.
That's what I'm saying. So where does curry come from?
Oh, your Indias and your Middle East and that kind of thing. I think curry was originally invented because to sort of like disguise the taste of the rotten meat that they were sort of forced to have back in the day. So that's why they just draped everything in curry sauce and spice.
No, that's a little bit more information than I needed. But he was Curry Man. He did a good job with it too, by the way. And nobody knew what it was. I guess somebody said, "What's a Curry Man?" It was never explained. It never explained to me. But I thought it had something to do with rice or something. I don't know. I knew it was like a Far Eastern type of character, I guess. But when he comes out there and does his goofy stuff, you don't really need a translation of what he was. Just enjoy what he did. And do like Dustin says, just enjoy wrestling for what it is.
Mm-hmm. One more thing. Zuela also says, my dad and older brother saw you back in Roanoke in the 80s. I believe my dad has always told me back in the day you were one of his favourite wrestlers and were a very bad man that could stretch anyone in the ring. My dad isn't doing very well these days. He's had 10 back surgeries, and I want to be able to get him one of your books for his birthday. That's Dirty Dutch Mantell with 2Ls at gmail.com. If you could be so kind to give my dad a shout out on the podcast, if you see this email, his name is Danny, and he's been a big fan of yours since '82.
Well, Danny, sorry to hear about your health problems, but and he first saw me where in Roanoke.
Somewhere in Virginia, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you were a fan. Hope I entertained you well. And as far as me being a shooter, I can stretch anybody in the ring. I wish you'd keep that to yourself because a lot of people don't know that. I'm not. But yeah, if they give me some trouble, I just stretch them. Hey, I want your health to get better. I want you to enjoy life, and I hope you enjoy this program. And is that his son that wrote to you?
Yes, I guess so. Yeah.
Tell him to write to me again, and I give him all the information on the books, acquiring the books, and I get an address. And but people, if you're interested about the books, just go to my website. That is still being worked on, by the way. It's a never-ending project. DirtyDutchMantell.com, and it'll pop up.
We'll ask a couple more and shut this show down. Chris says, first and foremost, I love the podcast. Keep up the great work. Dutch, I am a huge fan and wish you, your wife, and your family the best of health and a speedy recovery. He wants to know, his question, what was your favourite theme song that you came out to?
Rollin', rollin', rollin'. That was
Boy,
a
my
Rawhide
ass
song.
is swollen.
Yeah, that was the Rawhide song. I don't know where I got it in Memphis. I used to come out to it, and I don't know what kind of music I came out to in WCW, if I came out to any music, to tell you the truth. And I remember they put me together with Black Bart and Randy Golly, and we were the Desperados. That lasted about a month. And I don't know if we came out to that song or not. I don't know. But yeah, Desperados, the Rawhide song was probably my favorite theme.
Yeah.
Song I came out
Desperados
to.
by the Eagles would be a horrible entrance song. It's like Desperados, and it's like
Not
slow.
that. It was we would call it the Desperados.
Yeah, okay. Well, what was the theme? Do you remember that?
Rawhide.
Oh, still Rawhide.
Yeah.
Did you have any other? I mean, obviously you can't have in WWE. They'll provide your own theme and everything, or wherever it may be. But on the Indies, did you ever use any other songs? It was nearly always Rawhide.
It was sometimes it was what they had. And yeah, I would go out there to Rawhide mostly. They used to bring that's when we still use tapes. You'd bring your tapes and play this. But sometimes if I forgot it, which I did frequently, they would play something else and I would come out there.
Okay, this might be the last question unless you don't have an answer, and then I'll ask one more. Garrett from San Bernardino, California. On a recent episode, you both were discussing wrestlers who you wouldn't think would be trainers. Norman Smiley comes to mind. He's trained several of the current names in WWE, and I've always believed Norman was far better than how he was utilised on American TV. Wondered if Dutch had ever met Norman, possibly in TNA during his 06-07 stint. Thank you for the work. So, any stories about Norman Smiley?
Well, no. He's from England, correct?
I believe so. Yeah.
He's an Englishman. He has the accent. Very good. He's a shooter, what they call a guy that can legitimately wrestle, and pretty good sized guy, and very nice. And the thing about shooters training people, they train them to kind of shoot, but they don't really train them to work. And he had his own style, and I've never known him to even work in the States. I think who's he working? Is he working for WWE now?
Yeah, he's a trainer in WWE now.
Yeah.
He wrestled for WCW their last few years, but he was always a comedy character. He did the big wiggle. He always had trunks that were like 3 sizes too small for him. He was never taken seriously in WCW, but then somehow he gets a name as a trainer, and he's like one of WWE's most prized trainers now.
Well, and that surprises me. I don't know what he's training them on,
Wiggling.
really.
Big wiggles.
He could do that. But you can learn. This is the thing that guys don't understand about wrestling. You can, and remember, I told you it's not a job; it's a dream. And once you get there, you just wait for that dream to end because it's going to end sometime. And hopefully, you can stretch that, make a lot of money, and get out and then go do your life. Or you can stay in it if you want to be a trainer. But to me, I don't think that Norman Smiley would be my choice as a trainer. He can teach guys how to kind of half-ass shoot and get out of certain holes and all that, but the timing and the performing part of it, it takes a certain breed of person to do that. Terry Taylor's there; he can teach it. Tom Pritchard is, I don't, he runs his own school now. But this is not an easy business to learn. It's not. But it's not learning the business, it's getting somebody to give you that first break. And that's what you got to work on. You could be just average and get the first break, and somebody see something in you and keep you there. Take the Miz, for example. When I was with TNA, he sent me his pictures, and I was, he looked like there was potential there. And I says, okay, we'll bring him in. But by the time that we got to him, or I'd either somebody told me or I'd heard about it, but WWF, I think, or WWE, whatever they were then, they were interested in it. But I could see the potential. John Moxley sent me his photo and his resume, and I didn't see as much return in him as I actually saw in Miz, but I was still going to give him a shot because he looked very serious, and because I think WWF got to him quicker than I did, but I think we could have trained them better because we're going to put them right to work. WWE was going to send them to their training school and teach them their way. And this is what I'm saying about Vince. Vince had all these territories that he killed that he actually needed later on. Mm-hmm. Because that's all these territories he killed were places that the green talent or the new talent could have gone to and worked, in front of people almost every night and got a feel for it. But Vince, in his ultimate wisdom, killed them all off. And he said, I'm going to make a big company here, but it kills the whole business. And it almost did. when he was building that WWF. Hey, and this is why guys got out of the business, because Vince had killed most of it. Not by purpose, on purpose. It just, when he put his show on, it just killed all the little mom and pops, and there was nowhere to work. So it would seem like he would have put some kind of a coalition together with those territories and keep it running. They've came back to that idea now, right? What is it called? WWE ID or something?
No, that's just funding independent wrestlers, but then taking the bookings.
It's closely the same. I think the same thing. They're going to help guys along the way, but not take them to the training camp in Orlando, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they're gonna let them stay where they are.
Yeah, so, then they get first option of like signing or whatever. Just before we get too far off the point, I was just looking at Norman Smiley's match history and territory history, and he broke in Florida, then went straight to the UWF in Japan, which is the one where I think Akira Maeda knocked you out, or a version of the UWF. And then
you just had to bring that up.
I'm sorry, I did.
Hey, I still got brain damage from that. That spinning heel kick. I have dreams about it.
And then he sort of just like travels the world and then ends up in Mexico, where he ends up a fairly big star for CMLL as Black Magic. Then he goes to WCW, where he's treated like a jobber, and then he like trains people. It's such a weird career, Norman Smiley's. But he's been there for years, so obviously you see value in him as a trainer.
They like him there.
Yeah. Okay, on that on that point, we're going to end it now. So thank you, everybody, for watching. We will catch you again on Friday. Once again, the email is questions@dutch@gmail.com. If you want the Dutchman to answer your question, make it a good one, because we get a lot of emails every single week. So until then, we'll see you on Friday for Storytime episode 121. I think I'm right to say, Dutch, we the people.